Hi, welcome to Taking Stock, number 73, which I'm calling Unarmed Truth and Unconditional Love. This last Monday was a public holiday in the United States. The third Monday in January is always celebrated as Martin Luther King Day, as it will always be the closest Monday to his actual birthday, 15th of January. For those of us who grew up in the 1960s, prominent activists like Dr. King loomed large in our public understanding and debate, either as great hope or as terrible threat, depending upon which side of the political divide and perhaps which side of the Atlantic you stood. I was barely 11 years old in April 1968 when James Earl Ray took the life of Martin Luther King and also caused the death of the wife of the motel owner in Memphis who witnessed the assassination and had a heart attack immediately afterwards. But as someone who tries to preach the gospel, the good news about Jesus, and occasionally succeeds, I'm led to believe, King's words and actions have always held a fascination for me as I grew up. It has to be said that his public speaking style was verbose. As Colin Morris once said of someone else, he seldom uses one word when 40 would do. But to be fair, every well-crafted, if florid phrase has the ability to stick in your mind like Velcro. Other zipless fastenings are available. Yesterday, a new President of the United States of America was inaugurated on the steps of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., the very place where, it's not hyperbolic to say, just a few short days previously, the very nature of the democratic experiment, which is the United States of America, faced probably its most severe existential crisis. In the course of that inauguration, the new president, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., engaged his own rhetorical style, but in all of his words I heard the echo of the words of Dr. King, spoken more than half a century earlier. Words soaked, it seems to me, in the gospel values Dr. King and others have preached and lived over centuries. Words like these, which, quite literally, could have been spoken yesterday from the podium on the steps of the Capitol. I refuse to accept the view that humanity is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war, that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. Now, the presidency of Joe Biden is not the final word of unconditional love, and he wouldn't claim that it was. He's no more the perfect man than was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He isn't even necessarily the perfect politician. It was Biden, after all, who back in the 1980s plagiarised the famous barnstorming conference speech of former Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock about being the first one in his family to go to university. Remember that one? But other than being flawed, Dr. King and Mr. Biden have this in common. They both come across as they who tell it like it is, or at least how they see it, as people who embody the words they proclaim, rather than wearing those words as cloaks for their true motivations. The new president said much about the concept of love as an active, healing and unifying force. And in doing so, and I'm quite sure deliberately, managed in a political context to display, in a country which embeds in law the concept of the separation of religion and state, the deep and abiding faith which has no doubt sustained him in times of triumph, tragedy and disaster. But of course, that's what we would expect from a devout person, the ability to articulate his political instincts through the filter of his faith. Seems to me that the founding fathers of the American Republic got it absolutely right when they insisted that their new nation was to have no established religion. Their oldest constituent parts, the colonies, were, after all, to a greater or lesser extent, the products of various religious persecutions in the lands from which they emigrated. That didn't mean for them then, and doesn't mean for us now, and cannot mean for us now, in fact, or for any person of faith, that our political sentiments are to be divorced from the tenets of what ought to be the bedrock upon which the edifice of our social and family lives is grounded. If you're a person of faith, then it must inevitably influence your politics. If it doesn't, then quite frankly, it isn't a faith. It's at best an encultured habit. So I'm quite content with world leaders asking their fellow citizens in the midst of a civic inauguration, as Joe Biden did yesterday, to join with them in silent prayer in remembrance of those who've died in the pandemic, or those who are homeless or hungry, so long as that's coupled not with religious hand-wringing, but with active social action. To quote Dr. King once more, any religion that professes to be concerned about the souls of men and is not concerned about the slums that damn them, the economic conditions that strangle them, and the social conditions that cripple them, is a spiritually moribund religion awaiting burial. Take care, people. Stay safe. God bless you.